The Indianapolis Colts bench Anthony Richardson and will play Joe Flacco in seismic organizational decision. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here with the Pat McAfee Show to talk about this. This is wild. I mean, this is a crazy story out of Indianapolis. Not just the benching. Like, I think Anthony Richardson should have been benched, no doubt about that. But just the idea that they are kind of almost done with him. Like, they're kind of almost done with the development, or at least putting a major pause on the development and trying to win now with Joe Flacco. We'll talk about what this means for the Colts, sure, but we'll also talk about what I think it means for the entire NFL as far as how they handle quarterbacks, drafted quarterbacks, highly drafted top 5 in Richardson's situation. Moving forward, let's get into the video.
Be starting this weekend instead of Anthony Richardson. This comes fresh off a day of every person that's been involved with the NFL saying that a quarterback can't tap out. That's just not how it works. You can maybe if you're strained or injured, but just to say you're out of breath and to tap out of a game, that is obviously something you're not looking for in a guy to lead a program in a franchise. They've talked about a lot of his stats, I think.
So what he's referencing is that Anthony Richardson took him out of the game, or took himself out of the game on a long third down after a run. And after the game, they asked him about it, and he said, I was just tired. I was gassed. I was out of breath. I was gassed. I had to take myself out. And it was like a 3rd and 22, which, again, yeah, you never want the quarterback to take themselves out because they're out of breath. But I don't think that's the reason for this. It might be the reason for the, like a benching. But then to come out and say Joe Flacco is our starting quarterback moving forward, like for the time, like we're playing the season with Joe Flacco. That to me is way different than, we benched him because he took himself out, right? Shane Steichen was asked, do you think Anthony Richardson will be the quarterback of this team again? And he said something to the effect of, I don't know. We'll see how things play out. I hope so, but we'll see. I mean, that's not exactly a vote of confidence for a guy you drafted 4th overall a year ago.
Anthony Richardson is a very good football player at times, but he is young. He's going to make mistakes. There's been drops too, so his completion percentage, which has been talked about a lot ad nauseum as being a potential historically NFL bad completion percentage. I think there's some more to context to that story, but ultimately, why do you think this decision was made to go to Joe Flacco? And what are you hearing from the Colts organization, who I am not talking to because I don't want to know. And what I said yesterday, I think who knows how they took it and how they heard it, because it's the first time I've ever said something like that about the Indianapolis Colts. Colts fans are pissed off at me for even saying it. Now Joe Flacco's quarterback. What are you hearing from the building, Shefty?
You know what the amazing part about this is this morning I got a call that this was happening. And I reached out to a couple of people to confirm, and I spoke to some people on other teams. And when I said, hey, my sense is that they're benching Anthony Richardson, the reaction I got from some very smart people was like, of course they're benching him. Like it wasn't even an option.
Yeah, he's been terrible. Like, no doubt about it. Richardson has been bad, for sure. Now, again, this is totally different. Like, these are two different things we're talking about. Should he have been benched? Yes, no doubt about it. But the comments from Steichen sound like they're done. Like, it sounds like they've seen enough. They're done. Will he play again? Maybe. But it sounds like they're moving forward with Flacco. They're focused on Flacco and winning right now. And then whatever happens with Richardson kind of happens with Richardson. And that is the part that's kind of surprising to me.
Okay.
I couldn't believe how strong people were. And so when I heard that, I'm like, okay, this is happening. This is happening. And, you're waiting for confirmation. They met as an organization this morning to go over it. They obviously broke up those meetings. My understanding is that they have informed each quarterback, and now the move has been made. And it's a seismic move on a lot of levels, because you're benching the former 3rd overall pick, who now becomes the 2nd quarterback in that draft class to be benched, Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick, now Anthony Richardson. And yes, Pat, I do think.
Or 3rd overall. I was thinking it was 4th overall. 3rd overall pick.
It has to do with the tap out. Now, I don't know that. We'll get further comments.
Talk about firing or whatever the case is. I don't view that as the move that they did with Anthony Richardson as a firing. I believe this is hey, he's really young. He's been really young.
So this is a surprising stat. Watch this. This is crazy. So Anthony Richardson is 3 months younger than Shedeur Sanders and Garrett Nussmeier. He's 1 week older than Cam Ward. He's 6 months older than Carson Beck. And he's 7 months older than Jalen Milroe. I mean, some of these numbers about Richardson's age and just how young he actually is, it's pretty crazy. I mean, and it's also crazy of how little football he's actually played. You know, now this is where I'm confused on it from the Colts' point of view. Anthony Richardson coming out of college was as much as a developmental player as you will ever see. Athletic ability through the roofs, actual game time, actual snaps, actual, reps, very, very little. So you take him top 5 because of that ceiling, because of the, hey, if we can really develop this, he's got all the tools we're looking for. Let's see what we can do. You give him 200 pass attempts. He has played in the NFL a baby bit. He's played 10 games in his entire career in the NFL. 10. Okay? 10 games. And you've seen 10 games and you've said, you know what? All right, we're out of here. We're done. Again, the benching is one thing. Should he have been benched? Yes, he's been terrible. I mean, it's obvious that Joe Flacco gives him a better chance to win. But the verbiage being used from Steichen that we'll see if he's the quarterback of the future, we'll see how he develops, we'll see what happens down the road, who knows what, like that is a crazy, seismic organizational decision. Doesn't sound like, we're benching him because he tapped himself out and took himself out of a game. Seismic organizational decision sounds like we're kind of done. We're kind of done. Almost like a Bryce Young thing, where Bryce Young is, are the Panthers really trying to develop Bryce Young? I would say no. And it sounds like moving forward, the Colts aren't as interested in the idea of developing Anthony Richardson as their franchise quarterback moving forward, which quite frankly, I don't understand, because why do you draft the most developmental possible quarterback, give him 10 games, or arguably too soon? Like, arguably you give him 10 games when he's not ready to do it, and then you say, I've seen enough. Like, what did you expect? What did you expect when you drafted this player? You drafted a very, very unfinished project, and you put very little time into it. In this situation, 200 pass attempts in 10 games. And you're saying, not what we wanted, not what we thought. Like, that is a very quick change of direction for the Colts.
He made an error in a game by making a decision to think it was okay to leave the field as a quarterback that is supposed to lead a team into a very violent sport. It's a tough guy sport. That's what football is. Quarterback position has to be the face of that. Maybe this is just learning lesson. Now let's have you watch Joe again. Like, let's kind of, maybe we rolled out too early. We're not there yet.
Well,
maybe we'll be able to visit this in the future. I still assume that Shane and Chris and Jim Irsay and all the powers that be think that Anthony Richardson could become a great NFL quarterback. It worked with Jordan Love. Sat for 3 years. Patrick Mahomes sat for 1 full year behind Alex Smith in the building. He was in the building, watching Alex Smith, watching how it played, playing in practice against the defense. Anthony Richardson, we don't even know if he was in the building last year because he got injured week 5. Yep. We don't even know if he had a chance to even see what an NFL season is like. Did he get a chance to watch Gardner Minshew, who made the Pro Bowl last year? Mm-hmm. Got 1 play away from AFC South Championship home playoff game. It's like, did he even get a chance to experience anything of what life in the NFL is or what an NFL quarterback is last year? Or did that all get taken away because of shoulder surgery? I'm thinking the latter.
Now let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So let's look at some Shane Steichen here. All right, this is Steichen. The question is, will Anthony Richardson start for the Colts again?
Do you think Anthony will start for this franchise again?
I can't predict that, but I'm not losing faith in that. I promise you that.
Is that the plan?
I can't predict the future, but I mean, that would be great. We'll see.
Does that sound like a guy who's like, yeah, we're confident he's our franchise quarterback? I mean, he's talking about, I can't predict the future. I don't know. That'd be great, but who the hell knows? I mean, to me, this is so different than what McAfee's talking about. McAfee's talking about like a punishment for the benching, like a punishment for, this is not that. This is not, hey, we're sitting you for a game, we're sitting you for a half, we're sitting you for a quarter because of you taking yourself out of the game. It's not how we operate. This is, we are moving forward with Joe Flacco. And will he start again? Can't predict the future. I don't know. That part to me is where it's wild. Let's see if we can find some more Steichen quotes here. But, and then this right here, this is Anthony Richardson asked if he was told like why he was benched. Let's see what happens with this one.
Shane made the decision to switch quarterbacks. How did he explain it to you? Like, why was the decision made? How did he explain that to you?
He just told me that they were going to go with Joe, and that was that. And, I just had to, just take the information and just grow.
Did he explain why?
No, not necessarily.
Shane made the decision to.
I mean, it's not sounding good. Like, it's not sounding good at all as far as how this team is moving forward with Anthony Richardson. This is Shane Steichen being asked, says Anthony Richardson knows he can't tap out of a game even for a play, but that's not the reason he's being benched for Joe Flacco.
He knows that he can't do that in that situation. That's part of the growth and the development process that we go through. And again, I think Joe gives us the best chance right now going forward.
If any did the tap out.
Okay. I mean, again, we got like three different things happening. First thing is, was he benched for the tap out? Sounds like the tap out was problematic, but it's not why he's benched. Second thing is he benched for a game or the whole season? Sounds like the whole season. Third thing is, where do they view him long term? Sounds like that's very much up in the air, if you ask me, which is very different than how McAfee and them are framing this.
I'm thinking this year, maybe getting a chance to realize what it is like to be an NFL quarterback, what it means to be an NFL quarterback, how you're allowed to operate as an NFL quarterback, and Joe Flacco being a guy you learn from. I think that's not a bad thing. I think this is a good thing,
Agreed.
Especially if it becomes a learning moment for Anthony Richardson in the future.
Yeah, I said it a few weeks ago. Him being, benched or putting Joe in there, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for him. It's a learning experience. Definitely not ideal, for the organization, for the team. You want ideally for the young quarterback you drafted high to develop, become the face of your franchise, become an all-time great, 10, 15 years, win a couple Super Bowl championships. But how it ends isn't necessarily always connected to how it starts. So for him, you got a guy like Joe Flacco who can play, who can win. And this is a move, I think, for the locker room, because the locker room, you see it. Obviously, you're talking about what people are talking about on TVs and microphones, but that locker room, you have conversation immediately.
Every player that had a microphone in front of him yesterday,
that's what I'm saying,
said the same thing.
Immediately, it's something you haven't seen. So it is a learning. It's going to be a learning spot for him for sure, and you hope he goes on to grow. But for that locker room, you have a team. You talk about it all the time. You paid a bunch of good players in that locker room. This isn't Max Crosby. Anytime he speaks, he's like, "Hey, I want to be here. I want to win. I'm not here and interested in a rebuild." It's a week-to-week, year-to-year league for these players. So it's a big move. Once again, not ideal. And you got to know everybody's on the same page from ownership on down when you bench, your top 4 picks. So it wasn't just that play. It was also the low completion percentage. And I don't think the film looked great. He wasn't protected under pressure, I think 6% of the time. But going out on Sunday, Joe Flacco gives this team the best chance to win. Now,
no doubt about that.
That's just my opinion. They made the decision. Hopefully he grows and once again goes.
Now, that's a good point, and it's something I tweeted about, but just this move completely shifts the Colts of all of a sudden being like, hey, we're a team developing some young players. Okay, whatever. We're competing, but blah, blah, blah. To make this shift, you believe you can win. To make this shift, you are looking around saying, you know what? We think Flacco gives us a chance to win here, and we prioritize what we think we can do and accomplish this season, whether it's an AFC South title, whether it's they think they can actually compete in the AFC. I mean, whatever they think they can do, but they prioritize that success over potentially the development of Anthony Richardson. And I mean, you don't make this move without full on going for it. This is the most signaling you're going for it thing a front office can do. I mean, you don't do this. You do not make this move and say, yeah, we think we can win 9 games. Yeah, sure. You make this move because you think we're going to hang some banners.
It was going to be a great quarterback, but I think it was the better move for the Colts right now.
Yeah, I think you just take everything into account. Yesterday obviously didn't help, or Sunday didn't help, and then the fallout from it. But you mentioned they paid all these guys. This could be a playoff team. They're good enough to make the playoffs, and Joe Flacco being in there, they've looked better than they have with Anthony Richardson in there. He gives them the best chance to win, and you can't really be in a position, right? Like, we're still early in the season. You know, it's not week 15, you're eliminated from the playoffs. Okay, let's put the young guy in and let him kind of get a bunch of reps. It's like, we need to go right now, and Flacco gives them the best chance to go right now.
Now, long term, there's going to be people that are going to look back and say, you could have given Anthony Richardson more reps, with that team. It's like, this team is what years are we trying to win? What years are we not trying to win?
Yeah, what game?
Just so I know when we're trying to win, when we're not trying to win. When one position is not ready, but everybody else is ready, is that the years we're not trying to win? But then when what do these contracts look like?
Mm-hmm. But you do have to, but that is part of this where it's like, but you drafted him knowing this is going to be a long developing process, and it seems like you thrust him in there, and then you pull the ripcord immediately. Like, that's where there's kind of like, because you take this quarterback top 5, okay? Played very little college football, very raw, and then you thrust him in there, and now all of a sudden it's like, no, we're in a win now situation. I'll say, okay, well, then why did you draft him? Why if that's the case, why didn't you draft another position that'd be more impactful and more ready? Try and win now. Like, you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth if you're the Colts front office.
It's like this team was
the Diggs situation now too.
They had to tell him he's still part of. Hey, you're still the future. I'm sure they told him, hey, your career's not over in Indy. Like, we still expect you to be our guy.
I hope so. These Colts fans were mad at me yesterday for not defending them, and it's like.
But that's what I'm saying with AJ Hawk, where he's saying, like, Steichen certainly did not. Unless Steichen told him something different and went in front of the press and said something different. Now, real quick, before we end the video, I want to get to this point right here. So the question is, how are NFL teams going to develop quarterbacks moving forward? This is what I think is going to happen. So we're seeing, 10 years ago, the NFL was full of the best quarterbacks were those who could create and the best quarterbacks who could stretch the ball downfield and could push the ball and whatever else. We saw it with, a bevy of quarterbacks. Okay, it was all about tossing the pill around. What are we seeing now? What we're seeing now is, and so then you have all of these young quarterbacks coming up are trying to emulate, deep passes down the field. Who can push the ball the most? The NFL is turning into kind of a 7-on-7 kind of league, right? Spread it out. Air raid is taking over the NFL, is taking over college football, whatever. That's all you're seeing, okay? Josh Allen's a great example of that. So now what we're seeing is we're seeing the NFL go backwards, where now no one's taking the top off the defense. Everything is this too high shell look, and everything is short and intermediate. Well, that is really, really bad for quarterbacks who, for their entire life, were told explosive plays, arm strength, deep down the field, take the top off the defense, all that stuff, which is exactly what Anthony Richardson kind of is. What Anthony Richardson is not is this hyper-accurate, hyper-efficient, short to intermediate passing quarterback, a la someone like Brock Purdy, right? As the NFL shifts more towards this Shanahan system of, short, intermediate, super efficient, very safe, not really trying to, have these super explosive plays down the field. Arm strength really doesn't matter. It's more about accuracy, more about the reads, more about playing inside of the system. As that is happening, it, in my opinion, devalues the quarterback, the individual quarterback. It devalues that like super explosive, creative, whatever kind of player, and it makes the quarterback much more rotational. It makes the quarterback what running backs were 5 years ago, where running backs were like, hey, anybody can do this. We don't really need it. Like, in some individual running backs are great, sure, but overall, we don't really need it like we did before. I think you're going to see that with quarterbacks. And I don't think it's a coincidence that over the last year, 2 years, we've seen the shift from these like really kind of high risk, high reward, explosive down the field passing quarterbacks. They have kind of struggled. And who has been successful? The Joe Flaccos, the Sam Darnolds, the Brock Purdys, the quarterbacks who can play kind of in this system, in this shell, the veterans who can read, who can make the efficient throw, can make the short to intermediate. They're not trying to do too much. Even Jared Goff to an extent. Like, those quarterbacks are all of a sudden what we need. So it might be one of those things where Anthony Richardson is just playing the sport at the wrong time. where, yeah, Joe Flacco does give them a better chance to win because Joe Flacco plays more into what is now good, what is now effective. Patrick Mahomes, what is he known for, right? He's known for explosive, down the field, pushing the ball. The NFL changes. Right now, Patrick Mahomes is having the worst year of his career. So it happens to everybody. Right? And I know they're undefeated, but if you look at just Patrick Mahomes, he's been terrible. He's been, for his standards, he's been terrible. He's been awful because the NFL has taken away where his powers are. The NFL has taken away what he is great at, and he did change the NFL. It's almost like if the NBA would just guard the perimeter, all of a sudden these three-point shooters that grew up trying to emulate Steph Curry, all of a sudden they're not good anymore because now the NBA is guarding the perimeter exclusively. So, I think we are, and I don't know how long it'll last, but I think we are moving much closer to you draft a quarterback. They don't have to play immediately because they're all kind of system guys anyways. You let them sit for a few years, and then when they're caught up to the NFL game, when they're caught up to the actual, the system, they know the playbook, they know all that, then you play them. But the need to play a young quarterback to come in and change the franchise, to come in and do all that, I don't think that'll be a thing. I think we're going to see kind of a pushback on that, to where teams are going to be much more likely to stick with a Joe Flacco or a Sam Darnold or whoever, let a J.J. McCarthy sit there for a few years, and then once he grasps the whole thing, let him play. So that's my prediction. Get on down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about this. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.